My name is Jason Salomi, and this is Perfection, an athlete's perspective. And with me today, we have a really special guest, Rory Smith. He's an all-rounder for Glamorgan in Scotland. He's been playing cricket for pretty much his whole life. Born in Scotland, grew up in Wales. Rory, welcome to the show, man.
Nice to be here. Nice to be a bit of a special guest, first one.
Yeah, awesome, man. So I just want to ask you quickly, how did you discover cricket and who introduced it to you?
So my old man, my dad played when he was growing up. Didn't kind of play a huge amount when he was older, but he kind of introduced me to the game when I was young, and I was kind of between cricket and golf because he played a lot of golf as well when I was younger, and so I kind of had to make a choice when I was about 6 or 7 because they're both summer sports. So he kind of said, "Well, you got to choose one or the other," and at that point, I was enjoying my cricket a lot, so I chose cricket. So I think we just went from there, really, and I've kind of just played ever since.
Nice. And do you still play golf now?
So I didn't play when I was younger, obviously, because I was playing so much cricket through the summer. I didn't play a huge amount, but then I took it back up when I was 18, and now it's either I'm either on the cricket pitch or on the golf course. So it's a nice way to distract myself.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's awesome. So today, if you don't mind, I want to talk to you about a few things. I want to talk to you about sort of injuries and sort of how they take the toll on you mentally, physically. I want to talk about recovery because obviously you're a bowler as well as a batsman, so it's got to be quite a toll on you. And just maintaining focus, and that's something that I kind of struggle with in my sport, if that's all right.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, awesome. So I've always tried to sort of get better as an athlete. I take pride in finding different ways to get better. And I think the best way to do this isn't just staying within my sport and talking to people that I play with and do what I do. I enjoy talking to people like yourself who are, professionals in other sports and sort of learn about a few transferable skills. And I know, I was doing a bit of research on yourself and I see you've had quite a few injuries. Was there sort of a theme with your injuries? I know you had a stress fracture in 14 and a few hamstring injuries in 15. And was there a certain theme with these injuries or was it just sort of wear and tear?
I'm not sure there's been two kind of the main theme has been they've all been while I've been bowling, so I've never really injured myself like running or I think I just get my finger catching a ball once, but it wasn't that was a outside thing.
Yeah.
But everything else has really been while I've been bowling, and it's such a strange movement that I don't think anyone's bodies are really built to bowl,
Yeah.
especially at top end speeds. So it's basically been mostly barring that. I had 2 stress fractures in my foot just from impact in 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
So I had 2 back to back. Apart from those, they've all been just random throughout my body. So I've torn calf muscles, I've torn hamstrings, I've torn sides, obliques, pec. I did my pec last year, my groin, elbow issues. So they've all been kind of spread out, and I think I've maybe done my hamstring twice, but apart from that, they've all been, and maybe my groin twice, but they've been years and years apart. They've all been separate issues,
Yeah.
but I think most of them, the theme going through, a lot of them have been fatigue issues. So as I've got through long days and come to like the end of spells, that's when I've kind of done muscle injuries, and they've never really been massive ones, barring
Yeah.
I think one was a real big one. The others have all been grade 1, grade 2, and they're just sort of niggling ones where you get kind of getting going, and you break down, have a little muscle tear, and you've got a couple of weeks off, month off, and then you kind of got to build up again. So I think it's worn on me more mentally than physically in terms of really damaging a body part. It's more upstairs in the head where it's probably been tougher.
Yeah, and how does it affect you mentally? What are you sort of thinking when you're recovering sort of strenuous injuries?
Yeah, most of it's frustration because having spent so much time out, having every time you do it again, it's sort of that, oh God, it's not again. But I think I've been quite lucky that I've had some good people around me, and I've always been. It's maybe lasted a couple of days where I felt a bit sorry for myself and a bit down.
Yeah.
But I think I've not had too many injuries where I've had to just sit and do nothing then. I think most of my injuries have actually been I've been able to get straight on and get into my rehab as soon as
Yeah.
possible. Haven't been any real long layoffs without being able to do anything. And I think thankfully a lot of the time I've been able to carry on doing other stuff, whether that's batting, playing golf. So I've still been able to keep myself occupied in different ways. So I think that's been the main thing for me is while I've been rehabbing is trying to work on other areas that I can improve or keep my mind occupied. So this summer when I had a hamstring injury, I went away, and I think when I had my calf as well, like I wanted to come back in better shape than I was when I was injured. So then I went away and I came back from a calf injury, and I think my jump scores had improved by 3 or 4 centimeters. So I'd gone from kind of 45 to high 40s, if not 50, on counter movement jumps. So I kind of always try to come back in a better shape and learn from it afterwards on every one, which I think's been quite important. And it's maybe shown that I've not done many injuries again. So I'm kind of learning as I go, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think so, touch wood.
And when you're actually in the rehab process, because I know I've torn my meniscus before, and it was a pretty lonely injury. It's sort of long days, and you're just recovering sort of by yourself. How do you feel?
Yeah, so it kind of gets frustrating. I think it's a bit. I think quite a few of the times I've been injured, there's always tends to be a couple in the squad. There tends to be 2 or 3 of us who are rehabbing at the same time. So it's kind of it makes it a bit better knowing, like, when you're not there on your own, just in an empty gym training. There's a couple of other guys kind of doing the same thing and kind of working their way back as well. But that is kind of the tougher side of things when you're working your way back. It feels you're kind of losing ground a little bit, but that's, I think, where having something outside, whereas I kind of have my goal for some other things, courses that I'm doing outside the game, where they're kind of really useful in terms of just keeping my mind occupied, and I'm not just sat at home kind of all I can think about is what I'm missing out on. It just kind of takes my mind off it a little bit. And I think that certainly helps with recovery as well, because I'm constantly down. From the mental side of things, I think if you've got a positive mindset on it, I think it can only help in your recovery. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, having stuff outside of your sport really, really helps. And like you said earlier, having good people around you really, really helps. So one thing I sort of struggled with after I tore my meniscus, I had an issue sort of trusting my body and knowing it would be able to do exactly what it did before it got injured. Is that something you went through?
Yeah, certainly. I think especially this year. So I tore my hamstring.
Ouch.
It would have been first of August. So I had wasn't too bad. It was a minor grade 2 tear. So there wasn't a huge amount of time out. But obviously, because the season was a lot shorter, I think they were saying it would have been 6 to 8 weeks recovery. So that was basically going to be the end of my season essentially. And I kind of looked at it, well, we're going to lose. So if we try and rehab this early, because it was only a minor end of it, and I've spoken to the physios and the S&C, we set it out, and I think I came back in 4 weeks. I think it was pretty much 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4.5 weeks, and it was certainly from the previous year. I'd actually torn my groin, and we tried to rehab it too quickly. I think it was worse than we probably thought, because I've had a couple of tears and I turn up the next day and they can't get me to feel it. It's sort of, the strength is still there. It's just that high end, when you get through real high end bowling, that's when I kind of tear muscles and I feel it. So anything up till that, like low speed strength work, I'd come back and you wouldn't be able to tell I was injured. So there was the previous year when I had that, we tried to rehab my groin very quickly and it almost blew off. I think I was a couple of strands away from having an operation to stitch my groin back on. So then when we came to it this year, it was certainly a nervous maybe week for me, leading up to that game where I kind of knew what I knew my hamstring wasn't that bad, and I knew the strength was there. But when you get into that high end speed work, whether it's sprinting or bowling, that's when it can really kind of go big time. So that was, I think we took a week building up the speed stuff, and I think it was one session, I think, where I came back from my hamstring and I beat my PB on 20-meter sprint. And
Excellent.
I think it was little things like that where that's kind of me trying to come back better than I left it. But having those little wins along the rehab process, I think certainly it was almost that one session settled my nerves, so to say, on in terms of how it would be going into a game. So I think it's just building. I'd almost rather do the bit at the start and kind of get through that sort of stuff, and then when you get into the real high end stuff, almost taking that extra session to really trust it and kind of have faith in it, because the last thing you want is to go into a full match situation and it comes down to the last over and you're holding back a little bit, because if you've got that feeling of holding back, then you're never going to really deliver your skills
and
to the best ability you can. Trust is a big thing, but I think once I had those small targets in my head where if I hit this target, I had that confidence in myself that I'll be fine. But it's knowing, and I think that's what I've done over the years, is knowing my body well enough to know. And what I learned last year when my groin went was knowing when it is there, when I'm ready, and having that. And once I hit that point and I know that my body's in a good position, I'm ready to play. It's just having full trust in it. And then if it happens, it happens. But if I don't have that full trust in it going into the match, then I might as well not play.
It is difficult as well, especially when you're having repeat injuries. Because like I said, I tore my meniscus, but I was speaking to a physio the year before I did it, and I actually dislocated my ankle when I was 16 playing rugby, and I didn't think anything of it. I was in a moon boot for a couple of weeks and what have you, and my physio was like, have you ever had an injury in your other leg? I was like, oh yeah, I did my ankle a couple of years ago, but that's nothing to do with it, surely. And I didn't realize at the time that I'd actually been overcompensated in my right leg, which saw my groin went. And then obviously then led to meniscus and there's a few other injuries. It's so difficult to, especially when you train a certain way and you're used to training a certain way and getting certain results, having to rethink that for sort of longer term success in your career. Have you ever had any issue sort of rethinking how you train and how you sleep, how you eat, and sort of looking for more success long term?
Yeah, so I've kind of every year, because I think I've had only a couple of years where I've had good injury records, so I'm constantly trying to improve what I do. And over the years, I've incorporated more yoga and Pilates, and I think after this year, I'm now going to do even more of that sort of stuff. So I'm probably going to look to do at least 2 or 3 yoga sessions a week through the winter and carry that on. And I actually brought that into my warm up before matches and training sessions. I'd kind of spend 10, 15 minutes and work through some yoga poses and just sort of like ease my body into it and really kind of change how I prepped for matches and kind of be as thorough as I could be in my prep. And also on that, I think in March or April, I invested in something called a Whoop Band. I'm not sure if you've come across that.
No, I've not heard of it.
So I think quite a few of the golfers are using them now. And I think they did their initial testing with LeBron James and Michael Phelps in America.
Okay.
But they're essentially, so it's just this little thing on my wrist. So it measures my heart rate variability, and essentially comes up with a recovery score, and has a little survey that you take every morning, and it tries to piece together what patterns of behavior you have that lead to poor recoveries, good recoveries, and
Okay.
tries to basically inform your training and recovery, and tries to match up days where you have poor recovery in terms of what you did the previous day,
Mm.
how long you slept for when you went to bed, whether you went to bed early, late, and essentially about trying to maximize performance and also at the same time hopefully have some sort of injury prevention in
Hmm.
like in terms of knowing when your body's maybe in a poor state, and maybe when you got to spend more time warming up and getting into it, or maybe holding back slightly at a training session, maybe not doing extras, or
Mm.
knowing there's a day where you can maybe do your extras. So it's trying to learn. I basically used it as trying to learn a bit more about my body and
Yeah.
trying to help with an injury and a kind of performance side of things. So kind
Okay.
of always looking for little bits that I can do that will help me potentially going into the future.
Yeah, exactly. And you can never stop learning. How you find the yoga so far? I used to do it twice a week. It is way more difficult than it looks. How you finding it?
Yeah, well, I think the first time I did it, there were a few poses where I was kind of like, had no concept of what my body was doing.
Yeah.
So I've got no idea what I looked like in those first couple of sessions, but I think I've been doing it about 3 years now.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say I'm the most flexible person, but I've certainly got better, which is I guess all you can ask for. So it's quite interesting. We do some sessions as a squad, and we did a bit more through the winter last
Yeah.
winter. And there's a few of the guys who really struggle with it, but I think like guys have different starting points, but I think everyone kind of improved, and maybe some didn't enjoy it as much as others, but I think
No.
it's certainly one thing that I wish I'd started when I was kind of younger, when I was 16, 17, rather than kind of when I was 22, 23. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, at least you started it. I wanted to ask you about bowling because you're hitting some pretty high speeds, and obviously that must put a lot of strain on your shoulder. I play American football, and a lot of QBs. I'm assuming because of the action, it's very similar to having when you bowl, your arm is high. When you throw American football, your arm is high as well, and it comes down sort of across your body. And obviously, you're releasing the ball at such high speed. So, what does recovery look like for you? And do you go for any sort of strain after bowling?
Yeah, so the bowling's actually not too bad on the shoulder. It's the bowling tends to be more like lower back and side. Um, it tends to be the more throwing. So when we field
Mm,
and throw, that comes into the shoulder, and you see a lot of our guys have through the top of the shoulders. It's quite sore and it gets quite stiff, and it's something that I've had quite a bit of soreness through my shoulders, but more from fielding, never really from bowling.
hmm.
But it's something that actually using the exosuit, which I know we both use, actually is I found really useful this year fielding, because
Yeah.
it sort of gave that little bit of support, and I actually really enjoyed using it.
Hmm.
But on top, like aside from anything in matches, I've tried to start doing what's called a sleeper stretch, where you lie on your side and almost push down on the back of your hand
Oh
towards
yeah.
um, back towards your feet. Um, and you notice the difference, and it's probably the same in baseball and quarterbacks and other throwing sports, where my right side, my shoulder won't rotate. I can't basically get it past 90 degrees very
Mm.
far. It gets to maybe 70. Whereas on my left side, I can almost get it all the way to the floor. So it's trying to
Wow.
keep doing that and trying to even it out, because almost everything we do is so one-sided. We do everything side on, so almost our whole bodies are almost like out of line, and different
Hmm.
sides develop because we use some sides in and not others, because we don't even it out. We don't do left and right. So it's
Yeah.
then in the gym in the winter trying to even that all out and kind of get our bodies working more together, both sides. So it is something that I think every cricketer's kind of constantly trying to even out, but it's kind of a work in progress, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
thankfully, so far my shoulder's held together, so it's got. I reckon it's maybe got another 10 years to last, and then it can go. But
Is that how long you're looking to play for? Another 10 years?
well, I think fast bowlers. I think it's to get past 35 would be a good effort.
Yeah.
Whether I may get to that point or not, all depends. But
Hmm.
I kind of, I think my contract ends next year, so kind of not really looking too much further than that at the moment.
Yeah, of
But
course. Yeah.
while I still enjoy it, I'll keep playing, and while I still feel like I've got ambitions in the game, I'll keep playing. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're both fortunate to be paid to do something that we love to do, so that's always nice. You're also a batsman as well, and one thing I've always been in awe. 'Cause I remember I used to watch cricket quite a lot. I went to Lords quite a few times to watch England play, and when you stand side on and you look at the wicket from the side, you cannot see the ball. You can only really see it when you are either stood directly behind the batsman or directly behind the bowler. How on earth do you actually play pace? Because I have no idea how you play it. Is it
Yeah.
vision? Is it vision? Are you anticipating? How do you do it?
So I think a lot of it's and a little bit is probably anticipation because you get a feel as to where the ball is, and you kind of get an idea of where the ball is in a bowl. So you probably visions you're trying to spot the ball in that area a little
Mm,
bit more. But I know it's something I've looked at, and I think quite a lot of guys just will play and not really realize what they're doing in terms of where they're looking. But
mm,
it's something I read an article about, and I kind of I found quite interesting in terms of what some of the guys at the top of the game do.
mm.
And a lot of it was so whether people focused while the bowler was running in, some focused on looked at the ball, others looked at the bowler. Um, but I think some of the most successful people actually they didn't actually look at the ball as the bowler's running in, so they'd actually focus on the ball or kind of have a light focus on the bowler's face.
Yeah.
And then as they got into the delivery stride, they'd then have a strong focus on a box of where the bowler's arm was going to come over. So it would be slightly above and to the left of where the bowler was. And
Mm.
they'd focus on that almost a little box where the ball was
Okay.
going to come out of. And they'd almost spot the ball then rather than following the ball while it was low, while the bowler's running in, it's by their waist.
Mm.
Then when the bowler bowls, their vision's got to go from waist high up to where the bowler's going to release the ball. So in that split second, you probably missed it
Yeah. Yeah.
in the ball. Whereas going from the face to then that box, it's a smaller gap for your eyes to move to, and you have
Hmm.
your then focus of where the ball's going to be released from, so you can
Mm.
pick it up earlier and see it. And I reckon quite a few guys will just do that and not realize what they're doing
Yeah.
when they're playing well, and then when they're not seeing the ball so well, they're picking the ball up late, and maybe don't have that correlation in terms of maybe they're looking at a different spot, they're focusing on the ball too much or whatever.
Hmm.
So it's something that I found interesting in terms of picking the ball up because even when guys see it when guys are bowling into the 90 mile an hour, kind of getting up to 95. I saw one of the South African guys in the IPL got up to 156 k's, which is
That's
not
ridiculous.
far off 100 mile an hour.
That's
And even at
ridiculous.
that side, like even the best players in the world, like struggle because
Yeah.
it's so quick. Like I faced Ollie Stone this year,
Wow. He
and
is quick.
I kind of barely saw the first ball, and then he bowled a reverse swing Yorker, which cleaned me up second ball. So it was a tough one for that, but it's it is tough. Like even the top guys, when you notice it when there's real pace,
Mm.
it just is a different game. It is a different game.
Who would you say is the fastest bowler you've played and the hardest bowler you played? 'Cause I know that's sometimes different.
So I faced so when I was a few years ago now. I faced Sean Tate while he was playing at Essex.
Oh yeah, he is
Um,
quick.
and we managed to get set up a quite a green hard pitch, and it was
Mm.
flying through it, and I was thinking, why have we done this? They've got a guy bowling early 90s,
Yeah.
and we've got our crisp bowlers at like 85, 86 or something. thinking, why have we like produced one of the quickest wickets in Cardiff? Normally at Cardiff it's kind of slow and low, and for some reason, and a lot of the time, and we've given them green quick one. And I was sat in the dugout, and the guy before me got bowled, and just all I see is his middle stump doing 3 or 4 cartwheels as it goes to the keeper. So I'm walking out there going, Jesus, this could be a little bit tricky. But I think I didn't really move my feet much. I kind of sat myself, and all I was trying to tell myself was keep my head still, and I've got a chance to kind of see the ball. It nearly took my head off, but I think I survived,
Jesus.
and I ended up kind of with a few runs at the end, so I didn't do too badly. But that was
That's
probably the
not too
quickest
bad.
I've faced.
Yeah.
Best bowler I've faced. It's a tough one. I faced like weirdly one of the bowlers who's caused county batsmen nightmares. A guy called David Masters,
Okay.
but he'd bowl about high 70s maybe, but he'd
Yeah.
just nibble it around on a green top at Essex, and
Oh, he's tricky.
I only faced one spell off him, and I can't. When I think I was 19, 18, 19. I barely laid a bat on him, and I think he was getting so frustrated as I played and missed everything. But there's a few guys like that who have caused chaos around the county circuit even over the years. There's another one called Darren Stevens, who's I think he's caused many a batsman a few nightmares over the years, just bowling 75, high 70s.
Yeah.
And he just kind of like swings them both ways, bit of nibble, and he picks up 50 wickets a year or something. So
Brilliant.
he's always near the top of the mark. So it's not always the quick guys who do the damage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's those sort of guys who just become masters at what they do, and they're so good at it. There's not really much you can do against this. It's quite difficult. Also, I understand cricket is a tactical game as well. So when you've got a tricky batsman, how do you set the field? Do you set the field based off film analysis, based off what your captain's been telling you, or based off feel?
Yeah, we get a lot of videos. So basically, every ball I've ever bowled in everyone's ever bowled in county cricket in the last since I've been playing is filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a lot. There's a lot of footage out there to go through. So we'll kind of have like a little recap before games on different players. In longer form cricket, it doesn't change a huge amount. There's maybe a little comment here and there on how people are getting out or where they're strong. But it tends to come more in the shorter forms when guys are doing funny things. They're flipping over their heads, going over the keeper, or hitting weird parts of ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it tends to come more into it. So the fielder will tend to fine leg will be the one you kind of fiddle around with. So if guys
Okay.
will scoop or lap,
Yeah.
if they're known to lap, that fine leg will just go straight out. Whereas if guys tend to stand and hit pass, try and hit over your head a bit more, then you
Mm-hmm.
maybe bring fine leg up. So it's very minor things, and also depends on what you're trying to do as a bowler, like what ball you're trying to bowl. You'll set your field and where you're trying to get the batsman to hit you.
Yeah.
Hopefully to their weaknesses rather than their strengths. So it's kind of it kind of matches up a few different things. Also the pitch as well. If it's a slow pitch and you're kind of bowling into it, and you'd maybe have a slightly different field than if it was a real good wicket where the batsman can just hit straight through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of marrying up those three things really: the batsman where they're strong, where you're trying to personally bowl the ball, and where your strengths are, and then also the pitch, and kind of combining those three things. And you
Yeah.
probably then set your field, and your captain will have his basically where he thinks as well, looking
Mm-hmm.
at all of those as well. He'll tend to look at the batsman and the pitch and have his ideas where he wants his field. And that's then where you as a bowler come into it, and you kind of speak about what you're trying to do,
Mm.
and then you'll kind of marry them all up and kind of set your field from there really. So it's kind
Yeah.
of a bit of everything. We talk a lot as bowlers, so I'll talk to the other 3 or 4 seamers, whatever, and working for them, and we'll kind of all be talking all the way through the game, on what's working and what's maybe not working. So
Nice. So you basically you might start off with a plan, you might just keep going, and it might just change throughout the game.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of you always got to be ready, especially in T20 cricket. That maybe if something's not worked first out, you got to be real quick on changing because if you don't change as quickly as possible, the game's over and done before you know it. So
Hmm.
it's kind of always been adaptable.
Well, Rory, man, I've really enjoyed the discussion. What I'm gonna take away and sort of look to apply to my game. I really liked when you spoke about having just so much trust in your rehab because you've put the work in and you've done what you need to do, and if it goes, it goes, but you can't help that. So I really like that sort of mindset. All right, guys. Well, you can find Rory on Twitter and Insta at Rory Smith on Twitter and Instagram. Rory, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I'll speak to you soon.